Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of KCU where the AUS finally got things underway. There are more surprises in the OUA and Calgary took revenge. Here to discuss it are our panelists Gord Randall and Justin Dunk. But before we get to that, Andrew Wadden will start us in the Queen City where a streak was broken.
Well, Jimmy, a little bit of a spoiler alert there, but this one was a light-em-up affair in Regina.
Well, if you like gunslinging, this one's for you. Fast forward to the fourth Q. Bison's down 13 to start the quarter. Teo Dizar connects with Cam Fox, giving the Bison 16 consecutive points and a 3-point lead. Minutes later, Bumbolino! Houston Rennie with the scoop and the score. Manitoba's got this. Well, maybe not quite yet. Under 2 minutes to go, this goal line plunge from Noah Picton capped off an 87-yard drive, putting the Rams down just 5. And then they try the onside kick. They get it! Picton then goes to work, hits Riley Wilson. That's a 49-yard pickup. 4 plays later, Picton to Ryan Shinbine. Ball game. Picton weaves his magic. The Rams snap their 10-game losing streak and get Stephen Bryce his first career CIS win. In Calgary, Hardy Cup rematch, and this one, well, wasn't even a contest. The Dinos defense flexed its muscles, holding the national champs to just a single point in the first half. The offense, well, they did their part, putting up 35. Dinos go to 2-0 with a statement win over the T-Birds. Meanwhile, in the Chuck, the Saskatchewan Huskies also remained perfect on the year with a 12-point win over the G-Bears. Green Dogs running back Tyler Chow had himself a day, rushing for 191 yards. He's leading the nation with an average of, get this, 169 yards per game. To the Q now. McGill was down 16-0 to start the second half, but the Redmen rattled off 19 consecutive points. They steal a win from the green and gold. In Montreal, the Carabins punished Bishops to the tune of 61-0. Carabins pivot Sam Caron was fantastic in this one. 16 of 19, 216 yards, 2 touches in just one half of action. To the OUA we go, Mac in the nation's capital. And folks, if you don't know GG's football, well, you better recognize Ottawa pivot Derek Wendell. Well, he's a beast. The fifth-year slinger tossed for 441 yards with 3 majors, while Bryce Vieira and Mitchell Baines combined for 256 of those yards, scoring 1 major apiece. Ottawa smacks Mac by 22. The Guelph Griffins narrowly escaped getting upset once again, getting by Queens by 9. Guelph was down 13 midway through the third Q, but scored 21 straight. Can the real Windsor Lancers please stand up? After beating Guelph last weekend, the next week, well, they get pasted by York? It was the attack of the Hunchak brothers, QB Brett tossing 540 yards and 3 majors. Receiver Colton racking up 138 yards, 1 score in a blowout win. Western got back on track with a throttling of the Waterloo Warriors. New Mustangs QB Chris Merchant was outstanding, connecting on 89% of his passes with 4 majors. Greg Marshall, well, he liked what he saw from his new pivot.
You know, I thought we did a good job. You know, Chris did a nice job when he was in today. Took control of our offense. It was good. So, you know, we'll keep Queens guessing for a few more days.
In the T-Dot, or is it known as the 6 now? I don't know. Regardless of what they call it, the Carleton Ravens came into Toronto and conquered the Varsity Blues. Jesse Mills tossing for over 300 yards, 4 scores. Blackbirds take it by 58. AUS action caps off the real rematch of last year's Loney Bowl, and just like that game, St. FX came out with the W. Tavon Cook tossed for over 350 yards, while DeJuan Martin scooped up 127 of those yards, and the one tally X goes 1-0 with a 15-point win. And finally, the St. Mary's Huskies' dubious losing streak, well, it continues. Acadia holds the Dogs to just a single point and hands SMU its 17th straight loss with a 30-1 victory.
Now it's time for our headlines of the week.
Extra, extra, read all about it.
The Ottawa GGs do not want your love, but they do command your respect, especially after dismantling the McMaster Marauders in the capital, Justin.
They certainly do. It went down as a bit of a quarterback duel in the nation's capital, Jim, with Asher Hastings against Derek Wendell. And Wendell absolutely goes off in this one, throws for over 400 yards, and wins the duel in a possible matchup of heck-frightened contenders. Wendell comes out on top.
Absolutely, Justin, and in that matchup of Heck Crichton nominees, Wither, Asher Hastings in this one, great job by the Ottawa defense, and this is a huge win for this program. I talked last week about how they were being overshadowed. Well, hopefully not anymore, but even within their own town, they're having some issues battling the new kid on the block, that flashy team across town in Carleton. They've got the fancy uniforms, they've got the big budget stadium, they've got all the buzz in town, or they did. Hopefully, if you're an Ottawa U supporter, this starts to turn the tide.
My sidebar is the Regina Rams. They may have only received one vote in the top 10, but without question, this team is first in excitement with a double overtime loss and a 14-point rally with 1:35 left versus Manitoba on their home field to break that 10-game losing streak.
Absolutely, Jim, and you know, this could not come at a better time for the Regina Rams program. They open a new stadium later this season. They have finally have a head coach in place that seems to be well-liked, well-respected in the area. There's a little bit of buzz in town for the first time in a while about this team, and they're putting a great product on the field. It's all starting to come together for the Regina Rams. For me personally, I could not justify putting them in the top 10 with that opening week loss to Saskatchewan, but just like I said to the Ottawa GGs last weekend, if you're the Regina Rams, just go out and keep winning games, and you don't have to worry about what the haters have to say.
Leading this push for the Rams, guys, is Noah Picton. He's been huge for this program in the first couple of games, has rallied that team in the second game of the season and almost had them knock off Saskatchewan. I think they do deserve to be in the top 10 because of that narrow loss to Saskatchewan. That game's played a different day. Maybe Regina wins it, and they're 2-0. With Picton, this little scrambler, leading the way and making plays and throwing the ball all over the field. That guy might be the most fun player to watch in the CIS right now.
Now joined by Noah Picton, the quarterback of the Regina Rams, who just scored their first win in 10 tries against the Manitoba Bisons on Thursday. Noah, you're going to have to accept my apology in that we referred to you as Mini Mueller in the game up in Saskatoon against the Saskatchewan Huskies. Can you accept my apology?
You know, I will. That's fine by me. Growing up, Mark was a mentor to me and someone I really looked up to. So to be able to be compared to him and even named a Mini Mueller, although I think I might look a little bit better in a uniform than him or whatnot for whatever reasons, but I appreciate that.
Early on in the season, there's always talk about the Heck Crichton Award. Who's the leading contender for it? Derek Wendell out of Ottawa is one name that comes up, but your name is right there, if not slightly higher than Mr. Wendell's. Has that been in the back of your mind at all?
If that's a conversation, then so be it. But my focus right now is to keep the level of football that Regina Rams, the offense, we're playing at, and if stats continue to keep up and that conversation continues to go, then that's fine by me.
How different is this year's team under the guidance of Stephen Bryce, the new head coach?
I think his big thing is team unity, camaraderie, and really buying into each other. You're not playing for yourself. You're not just playing for the offense, but you're working for the defensive guys, and it's really a team game, and that's what it's been coming down to these past couple games, and that's what he reiterates to the players. So I think that's a big difference for us. We've really kind of come together as a group of guys, and we realize that it's going to take 12 guys on offense, 12 guys on defense, and 12 on special teams to get it done. So that's a big difference this year.
You've got a couple of games ahead of you, but you've got one on October the 1st against the Saskatchewan Huskies in the new Mosaic Stadium. It's the first event in the new Mosaic Stadium, and there's already 16,500 tickets sold. That's a sellout in the lower bowl. That's all they're selling, but how pumped up are you for this?
If you look at it, before week one, that game was pretty amped up and really a talked about item in the media and around town. But after that first week, I think it's even more so now. I think it's going to be a great atmosphere to play in for both us and obviously the Huskies. We're all looking forward to it. But at the same time, you don't want to get too ahead of yourself. We got two very tough teams coming up these next 2 weeks, and we got to take it one game at a time. And when October 1st rolls around, we'll be ready to go. But until then, we're just worrying about UBC.
Well, Noah, you are in royal company. There's only one other athlete that's been on here twice, and that's Mark Mueller. So consider yourself royalty.
Thank you very much. That is royal company indeed. So to be linked in there with Mark, that's a proud thing for me.
By the way, Stephen Bryce, now the second most winningest coach in Regina Rams history. So I think we can all agree on Picton and Wendell as weekend warriors, okay, guys?
Well, I have to go to Calgary, Jim, and take linebacker Boston Rowe. He was a key part of that Dinos defense that helped hold that UBC Thunderbird offense to just 8 points and zero yards in the fourth quarter. They get it done over UBC, pull the upset. He has a team-high 6.5 in a breakup. He's actually a quarterback who was a defensive back who they've moved to will linebacker. So this guy getting it done at that position.
Yeah, it's hard to keep track of where Boston Rowe is playing in any given season. For me, I was born in a household where my mother raised me to believe that kickers are people too, so I'm going to give out some love to Finley Brown, the freshman kicker from Winnipeg, Manitoba, kicking for the University of McGill now, and he was huge for them, 4 for 4 on the road at Sherbrooke as they pulled off a huge road victory and a big step forward for that program as they fight to become relevant again.
Well, I'm going to go to the AUS because I'm being nice. And also, Tavon Cook had one heck of a game with over 350 yards passing. We've had far too many offenses in the AUS underproduce. It's nice to see Cook come out for X and really produce and put some numbers up on the board in a big win.
I'll take it back from the East Coast to Ontario in my alma mater at Guelph. Brandon Gordon and Daniel Palmer-Simon, the two running backs, helped the Griffins lead a comeback victory against Queens. They ripped off 258 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. All came in succession in the third quarter to lead Guelph back from a 21-8 hole to get a big-time win and not allow the Griffins to endure a 2-game losing streak.
You had to rub that in, Justin. Back to Ottawa. Derek Wendell, Jim pointed out, he threw 3 interceptions in that game, but on the other end of 21 of his passes were Bryce Vieira and Mitchell Baines, combining for 256 yards and 2 touchdowns. These two dynamic receivers were huge for Wendell and the GG's offense to torch that McMaster defense.
Big changes going on at the University of Saskatchewan. We caught up with David Dubé earlier, who is leading the effort to change athletics on that campus. So who is responsible for operating Husky athletics moving forward?
Well, thanks, Jim, for the opportunity to talk to you about these historic changes. Husky athletics will be run by a board of trustees. That board will be 6 members of the public based on skills selected for their skills and expertise, and 5 members of the university community, all of whom are senior departmental officials, senior administration people, 2 deans, and we will report directly to the president and onward to the Board of Governors. So moving from a single college reporting structure in kinesiology, which is very common around the country, to a structure that will drive it directly and elevate the programs up to the Board of Trustees and on to the President of the University.
Now, I know some of the background behind this, and I know it was a long and hard road to get this done with a whole lot of curves along the way. Can you take the people through the process, because this thing did not happen overnight?
Sure, I can. We started a task force, or I was asked to participate in a task force, really a blue ribbon panel is what I could say. Former chair of the Board of Governors, 2 former chancellors, a former Husky athlete, the dean of kinesiology, and myself. And that process started some 4 years ago to examine best practices, to examine other university governance structures. And we looked around the country, and particularly in English-speaking Canada, we didn't see much. There is pretty much 2 common functionality governance structures. One is reporting through the Dean of Kinesiology or a Dean, and the other one would be a Vice President within administration, student services, or the like. And when we came back with our report, it really said we needed a maiden in Saskatchewan solution for the 21st century. We were functioning under a 100-year-old governance model, as most schools are. I don't have a 10-year-old phone. I don't have a 20-year-old car. I don't fly in a 100-year-old airplane. The 21st century is about transparency and accountability in governance, and I think we've delivered that for the U of S.
What does this mean this year for Huskies athletics, and what are your immediate priorities?
Well, our immediate priorities will be to finalize the bylaws of the organization so that we have clarity between ourselves and the president in terms of exactly what we will be able to do, although it will be pretty much all-encompassing. We'll finalize that, and then, while I might be very familiar with Husky Athletics operations over the last 10 years, many of our board members aren't that familiar. They're U of S alums, so there will be a process, an educational process. We'll start with them, and the board won't be fully constituted until November 1st. Then we'll work through benchmarking, best practices, gold standard setting. We'll go through all of our policies and procedures and figure out what those next steps will look like. So those who are expecting dramatic change overnight are probably not going to see it. This is a thoughtful group of people who are going to make sure that we succeed with each initiative. And so we're not going to try to do too much too soon. We'll be incredibly focused, but you will start to see changes, I'm guessing, next summer.
What's your long-term vision, and where do you see this program in 5 or 10 years?
Well, I think in less time than that, we should have a high-performing teams, and by teams I mean structurally within the athletics department, driving us forward both academically and athletically. I mean, our goal is to raise more championship banners in the next 10 years than we've done in the prior 50. And have more student athletes that are CIS All-Canadians. We think that we can take a significant number of our student athletes, enhance their experience, give them additional help and training, resource them properly, and win both on the field and in the classroom, ultimately creating great citizens, creating successful careers post-athletics, and having those people come back and lend their expertise to future boards is one of our goals.
Thanks, David, and we'll see you on Friday night when the Huskies host the Dinos in a battle for first place, that game on Shaw TV. Coming up, it's X's and Olsen with the coach.
Krown Countdown U is supported by the Guelph Griffins, the defending Yates Cup champions.
So 2 teams atop the BCFC deadlocked at 6-1, West Shore and Okanagan. But on Monday, the Sun announced that they won the Rashawn Simonized sweepstakes. The former Calgary Dino and Cincinnati Bengal prospect is headed to Kelowna in his CFL draft year. Meanwhile, the Calgary Colts still lead the Prairie Football Conference. And in Cégep D1, Andre Grasset and Notre Dame de Foix remain the only undefeated teams at 3-0. Now it's time to get to somebody who knows what he's talking about. Coach Olsen with X's and Olsen.
This week's episode, we're going to focus on University of Calgary Dinos' fifth-year pivot, Jimmy Underdahl, replacing one of the best ever in Andrew Buckley. He's not Andrew Buckley, but he's got a chance to be very, very good. Let's take a look at this first clip. So now Jimmy is an athletic quarterback. You're going to see how he gets on the edge of a defense and hurts them with his feet. Simple zone read scheme. We're coming downhill, reading the defensive end, and he bites on the run, and we're off the edge. Has an opportunity to throw to the back coming across the formation, decides to run, makes a big play with his feet, and finishes the run, which is important from a leadership perspective. Let's take a look here. Zone read. Back comes across the formation. Reads the end. He's off the edge. Has a chance to throw there, but decides to tuck it and finishes the run. You're going to see Underdahl going to his left off a play-action fake, stretch zone, key component of the Calgary attack. Get the defense to bite up, and we got a layered pattern on the outside. Let's take a look here. Stretch going right. Deep boot coming off the edge. We got vertical from the outside. We've got a little lazy out from the slot receiver and a drag coming across the screen. Layered pattern. This will be a core part of their passing attack with Underdahl at the helm. Let's take a look. Play action fake. This is what Underdahl does great. On the run, throwing darts down the field. This is about a 20, 35-yard throw. Breaks a tackle, and you've got a big play. This is what Calgary's going to need to do to find themselves being a power in the West again this year. So now, although Underdahl is a fifth-year guy, he hasn't played a ton of football. And anytime you haven't spent a lot of time under center in game situations, you're going to have issues with being decisive. This clip here, we're going to take a look at one of those. Simple sort of read concept. We've got a quick out from number 2 to the boundary. secondary, vertical. The vertical is a pre-snap read. The secondary read is this quick out, okay? On the backside, you've got a drag coming across the other side of the field. You'll see Underdahl taking a look at an open receiver and deciding not to throw it and coming and making a much more difficult throw. Let's take a look here. Quick three-step game, looking left, open receiver on the out, coming back, trying to force a ball into coverage. That's one of the things that he's going to have to curb, and that will come with playing time if the Dinos are going to stay on course and be one of the top teams in the Canada West.
Now it's time for Triple W 2K, or What We Want to Know. Triple W 2K, or the Saskatchewan Huskies for real, Gord Randall?
Well, Jim, we're going to find out one way or another this weekend. The Kyle Siemens era appears to be off to a flying start in Saskatoon, but they still have yet to play either of the two Hardy Cup finalists from last year. That ends this weekend as they take on the Calgary Dinos Friday evening in a game that will be televised on Shaw. That is a game I'm going to be watching incredibly closely because those Saskatchewan Huskies look like they could be a contender in this conference. They've got Tyler Chow, who's leading the nation in rushing yards per game. They've also got Siemens, who appears to be finding his stride. But there was a surprising lack of buzz around that team in the offseason. I don't really know how to figure them out. So that is a game I'm going to be watching really closely to see if the Huskies can make it a really wide open race in the Canada West.
Yeah, I'm not ready to anoint Saskatchewan as a legit contender out west yet, fellas, for a couple reasons. One, the first 2 weeks were a little inconsistent. You know, the Golden Bears have been a bit of a doormat out west. They only beat them by 11 points. And in the first week, that game could have gone Regina's way very easily. And you mentioned Kyle Siemens off to a hot start. He was in week 1, but last week against Alberta, didn't perform up to par. 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. I want to see more consistency and, in fact, more dominance from this team. And as you said, Gord, they need to beat some of the big boys before I'm going to be ready to say that they're a legit contender out there.
I'll tell you what, Saskatchewan, I don't like their secondary. They're going to get lit up by Calgary. Triple W 2K, does the OUA have parity for the first time since there was an OUAA?
That's going way back. Well, there might be at least through a couple weeks here in the OUA as we have 7 teams. I'm shocked to say that number, 7, with 2 wins already this season. So I think we're seeing slowly this conference go from a 3-tiered conference where you had the contenders, pretenders, and the teams that flat out had no chance to a sort of 2-tiered conference where you have the contenders and the pretenders. So I think there is some parity slowly but surely creeping into the OUA.
One of the big problems, though, is that there's still some 60 and 70 burgers being served in the OUA.
Well, yeah, Jim, I commented this past weekend that Windsor-Guelph result from last week, I think when we look back at the end of the season, is going to be the biggest WTF result of the entire season across the entire country. But the biggest thing for me right now is I don't really know where to draw the line between contenders and pretenders in the OUA. You're seeing these results that I think might be blips more than they might be a trend. And I've been outspoken as a skeptic of the newfound parity in the OUA, and I still remain a skeptic until we see this in a larger sample size than we've seen already.
Triple W 2K, is UBC's O in Kelowna because it's obviously missing and the Thunderbirds haven't found it, Gord?
Very clever, Jim. I don't know what's going on with this UBC offense. As Justin mentioned earlier, they had 0 yards of offense in the 4th quarter in Calgary. They were completely stymied in that game, and Michael O'Connor is a guy who has looked off all season, beginning with that exhibition game where they got trounced by the Manitoba Bisons. And if you are the UBC Thunderbirds right now, you are seriously suffering through a bit of a crisis of confidence after a first 3 weeks that have been tepid at best in this Canada West season.
It's shocking to see this offense struggle, especially in week 2, fellas, against Calgary for a couple reasons. Because you obviously have Michael O'Connor, who is an NCAA caliber quarterback, and all those weapons around him, a lot of them anyways, are guys he played with last year. Travell Pinto, Alex Morrison, Marcus Davis, just to name a few, even Will Watson as well. So he knows these receivers. It's not like it's all new to him like it was last year, but I'm going to go to the lack of a running game. And Brandon Deschamps, he was a senior leader last year for that team. You knew if you needed to, you could turn around to him and hand him the rock to sort of get this offense moving. But they're lacking right now. They do not have a playmaker who has emerged yet out in UBC.
And to jump back on top of that, one of the reasons I'm confident this is actually going to turn around for the UBC Thunderbirds eventually is that they turn over only one offensive lineman. They bring back 4 of the 5 starters from last year. That's a good foundation for them both to pass the ball successfully and to run the ball successfully. Look for them to find their footing sooner or later this season.
Well, one of the problems for the Thunderbirds as well is that their best 2 running backs are playing cornerback right now because of a thin roster. Triple W2K, is it all going to be X's and X's in the AUS this season? Justin, to you.
It sure seems that way, judging from week 1, fellas. We saw St. FX and Acadia get out to 2 pretty easy wins to start this week, but you get the feeling that Mount Allison, sort of this little team that could, might make some noise as the season goes along.
You know, and for me the question is, not only is it going to be X's and X's, but is it just going to be X and then everybody else? The X-Men, the returning champions in the conference, look pretty comfortable in that win over Mount Allison, who was the powerhouse of this conference for a number of years. Acadia looked like they were full value for the win against St. Mary's as well, but what does that really mean in the grand scheme of things? That's the game that I'm going to be watching alongside of my previously mentioned Calgary-Saskatchewan game to figure out what exactly is going to go on in the AUS this year and if there's going to be competition at the top. Because right now, I have a sneaking suspicion that it's the St. Francis Xavier X-Men and then kind of everybody else.
So that does it for us here on Krown Countdown U. You can get us on various forms of social media at the bottom of your screen, but for now, let's get out to the game. Krown Produce secures produce locally and from around the world for Canadian retailers. Krown Produce is also proud to secure sponsorship of University Football on Shaw. Krown Produce, supporting Canadian retailers and Canadian amateur football.
The CFL and our partners at Football Canada want to make sure we keep growing, promoting, and investing in a safe game. Hit! Football Canada now requires all amateur coaches to be safe contact trained by 2017. By creating a standard of safety for all in our football community, we're making an already great game even better. Make sure your youth coach is safe contact trained, because making a safe game means making a better game.